Hey, Red here. Welcome back. I knew you couldn't stay away. This time, I'm back with another dive into comic book gimmicks. In today's video, we're taking a look at the 1950s gimmick wonder, Captain 3D, the stereoscopic superhero.
Quiet Red Media. Shh.
Comic Book Gimmicks, Captain 3D.
Captain 3D is a character many people have probably never heard of. Not surprising, as he wasn't created by one of the big two, but rather by Harvey Comics, a publisher founded in 1941 and operating until the mid-1980s. The company was founded by Alfred Harvey and his brothers Leon and Robert, and it produced a wide variety of comics, including superhero, horror, and humor titles. However, the company is best known for its line of kid-friendly characters such as Casper the Friendly Ghost, Richie Rich, Little Audrey, and Baby Huey. Harvey Comics was notable for its unique approach to storytelling and art. Its comics were often more lighthearted and whimsical than those of its competitors, which tended to focus on superheroes or horror. The artwork in Harvey Comics was also distinct, often featuring bright colors and exaggerated characters. One of Harvey Comics' biggest contributions to the comic book industry was its introduction of 3D comics in the early 1950s. The company released a singular comic featuring today's subject, Captain 3D. Despite its many successes, Harvey Comics eventually fell on hard times in the 1980s due to a combination of factors, including the decline of the comic book industry as a whole, mismanagement, and legal disputes. The company ceased comic publication in 1982, and its characters and properties were sold off to other companies. Though Harvey remained active to some degree for years after, the company was never again able to reach the heights it had formerly attained. Captain 3D himself was a fairly typical superhero character. He had no real superpowers, but was a skilled fighter and had access to various gadgets and weapons. Despite the gimmick of the 3D technology, the Captain 3D comic was actually quite high quality, was well written, and featured some interesting plots and characters. The stories had a sci-fi bent to them, and the 3D effect was used to enhance the mood and atmosphere of the story. Captain 3D remains an interesting footnote in comic book history, as one of the first to use 3D technology in his stories. Today, original issues of Captain 3D comics are still sought after by collectors and fans of comic book history.
Section 1. History of Captain 3D.
Captain 3D was created by writer Joe Simon and artist Jack Kirby in the early 1950s. The character was created as a gimmick to help boost sales of Harvey Comics during a period when comic book sales were declining. At the time, comic book publishers were experimenting with new ways to attract readers, and Harvey Comics decided to try jumping on the new trend of using 3D technology in their comics. Simon and Kirby were hired to create a superhero character that could take advantage of this new technology. The two came up with the character of Captain 3D, a superhero who could literally jump off the page and into the reader's world through the use of 3D glasses. To be honest, the way they tried to use the panels and action in a way that made the most of this gimmick really shows how good Kirby was. They intended to create a series of stories that would require readers to wear special glasses in order to view the 3D effect. But the one and only issue of Captain 3D debuted in 1953, and although they had more planned, they never came to fruition. The 3D gimmick they hoped would help to boost sales of Harvey Comics ultimately didn't do all that well, as by that time, the short-lived gimmick was already losing steam. While the 3D technology used in the Captain 3D stories was seen as a novelty at the time, it was a significant development in the history of comics, and paved the way for future experimentation with new technologies and methods of immersion in comics. The quick decline was unfortunate, as Captain 3D was among the first to employ this technique, though the distinction of first truly goes to the Great Mighty Mouse, also in 1953. That's how fast this thing came and went. The fad blew up so quickly that many others tried their hand at cashing in. However, they tended to be an expensive novelty item, and audiences mostly fizzled out on the idea by the end of the year. So, the glasses. The stories featuring Captain 3D, of course, required readers to wear 3D glasses in order to see the 3D effect. These glasses featured red and green lenses, which allowed the reader's brain to combine the two images on the page and create the illusion of depth. The 3D effect was achieved by drawing the same image twice, once in red and once in blue-green, and then overlaying them on the page. While the 3D technology used in the Captain 3D stories may seem primitive by today's standards, It was a significant development in the history of comics and helped to establish Harvey Comics as an innovative and forward-thinking publisher in the eyes of many.
Section 2. Captain 3D Comics.
Captain 3D #1 was published in September 1953 and featured 3 separate stories. The first story introduced readers to the character of Danny Davis, a young bookshop owner. A strange man wanders into his shop and forces him to take a mysterious book. Shortly after, a thug comes in demanding the book and shoots the stranger with what he calls a gamma gun, melting the poor guy into nothing. The story then follows Danny as he releases Captain 3D with the glasses in the book, and Cap battles the criminal organization and their henchmen, who turn out to be cat people, which Danny is able to see using the glasses in a "They Live" style twist. The 3D effect is used well in the story, as Captain 3D literally jumps off the page in the book Danny finds. The second story in the issue, titled The Menace of the Living Dolls, features Captain 3D battling a phantom thief that leads them to a scheme put in motion by the Queen of the Cat People to use the power of the life force in the book to create supervillains. Closing the issue is a story called Iron Hat McGinty and His Destruction Gang. Work had begun on a second issue of Captain 3D, but the waning interest in the gimmick of 3D comics caused them to abandon the project. It remained shelved until 1999, where the original story was repurposed for Men of Mystery Comics number 15, from AC Comics, who had art done by Mort Meskin and Bill Black, in typical black and white comic pages. The cover is the actual cover meant for Captain 3D #2.
Section 3. Legacy of Captain 3D.
Captain 3D was a noteworthy character who helped to pave the way for the use of 3D technology in comics and other forms of media. His use of 3D effects was innovative for the time, especially the use of 3D as a central part of the character and his powers, and it no doubt had an impact on the comic book industry going forward. These early 3D comics truly opened the door for this gimmick and its use in the medium. Though the gimmick ran its course at that time, the technique has seen sporadic use in the years since. DC Comics, for example, reprinted its 1950s 3D Superman story, 3-Dimension Adventures, in 1998. And many other comics have experimented with 3D in various ways. In the 70s, Marvel even developed a character that homaged the Captain, a character named 3D Man, created by Roy Thomas and Jim Craig.
Conclusion.
Though Harvey Comics was a major player at the time, the 3D gimmick just wasn't to last, and Captain 3D was an unfortunate casualty of the constantly changing culture, left to the annals of history. Still, even with just one issue to his name, Captain 3D managed to leave a mark on the industry in various ways, and that's all a gimmick character can ask for. Gimmicky as it is, I feel like it's worth checking out the comic. If you have the inclination, give it a look. It's pretty interesting. Plenty of archives exist, and you can still find copies floating around too. Anyway, that's it for this round of Comic Book Gimmicks. Do the likes and subscribes. Touch the buttons. All of them. Do it. Peace.